All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Roberto Fernandez, and on behalf of the organizing committee of the National Conference for Teachers of English in Costa Rica, I want to welcome you to our next interactive webinar. Laura G. Holland has a master's in TESOL from Teachers College at Columbia University and a bachelor's in early childhood and elementary education from Wheelock College of Education. She has been teaching English language for nearly 35 years. At University of Oregon, she teaches English language and teacher education in the American English Institute and the Department of Linguistics. Ms. Holland is also the external reviewer and works annually with the teachers of Instituto Cultural Peruano Norteamericano, Chiclayo, in Peru. She has published numerous articles on language teaching, mentoring, and classroom observation, and co-authored the teacher training guidebook Shaping the Way We Teach English, From Observation to Action, published by the U.S. Department of State. She has presented teacher training workshops across the United States, Canada, Peru, Mexico, and in Cambodia. Here to speak to us today with the presentation, I Have to Do That, taking our language courses on the fly. Please welcome Laura Holland.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. Now I can see you all a little bit better. Well, thank you for those claps already. I would like to say to you all, give yourselves a little clap, a little pat on the back for coming. It's Friday night and you are here. You're not home and just with your feet up watching TV. You are here. So you are my kind of teachers. And then the first thing, I actually really want to go back and say, Buenas tardes, Costa Rica. Okay. Hello. Woohoo. All right, I am so delighted and honored to be here with you all this afternoon. And in a moment, I will begin my presentation, except I can't find my PowerPoint. Here we go. All right, so the first thing I want to say, is this good size or did this work out? Okay, the first thing I want to say, first of all, is I am not a theoretician. I am a boots on the ground teacher in the trenches with everybody here. And in the beginning of the term, well, as with everybody, everything shut down very fast, right? Suddenly it was March, things were getting crazier, things were getting very worried, and everything shut down, boom, really, really quickly. Whoops, we are in our test session there. There we go. And so what I wanted to talk to you about today is, on my first slide, I took out the original question, but my question when our university decided that, okay, we're just going to ask everybody to take their classes online. You have 2 weeks. And my first thought was, I have to do what? I have to take 4 classes, 2 English language and 2 teacher training classes that are absolutely completely interactive and based on face-to-face, and then put them on the computer, use Zoom. How am I going to do that? And so that became everybody's question in the middle of March or soon after. So we had to take our courses on the fly, our online on the fly, meaning the expression means suddenly with almost no preparation, while, oh yeah, also dealing with a catastrophic health pandemic. So we're dealing with all these things. How do we engage our students? What sorts of classroom management can we do to help make the situation a little better? And how can we promote student agency? So tips and tools from the trenches that I am with you. So the first thing I'd like to start with, though, I'm going to show you a series of 3 polls that I used in different ways. There will be 4 altogether, but we'll do 3 right away very quickly, just so you can see the different ways that I used them. So the first one will be gathering information about students or participants. So Gendry, can you open up poll number 1, please? After Gendry opens it, if you could just do it really quickly, and then we'll share the results in a moment. Okay, here we go. So which best describes your teaching context? I work with high school or adult students. I work with children. I work with both. I'm a student or a teacher in training or something else. Okay. Oh, so fast. This is cool. I've never done it with quite this many people before. All right, we'll wait another moment. We're getting close. All right. So it's looking like the majority of people here today work with high school or adult students. So that's great, but there are quite a few people who work with children also, some people who work with both, and then people who are in training right now or students or something else. So fantastic. The handout that I designed for you for this purpose has 3 columns, just a little bit of introduction, and then has 3 columns. And the middle column has all the activities, and on the right side, they are the activities adapted for working with kids, and the left side are the activities adapted for working with high school or adults. So you can do that. So let's see what. So I'm going to just quickly share the results. This is our group. This is who we are. So you can use these to find out who your students are. And that's a really fun application for this. Now I'm going to close this poll and we're going to move to poll number 2. Now this is a different purpose that I use them for. I used polls quite a bit in this last term for soliciting student input, encouraging student agency. So what does that mean? Well, that means that it gives our students a voice in how things run. So Gentry, could we do, excuse me, number 2, thank you. All right, so the question is, what should we do first today in class? Now, we are not really doing this. This is just an idea. Should we correct homework? Should we write discussion questions for tomorrow's test? Or should we study new vocabulary? So let's see, we'll see what people think in this group here. But here's the idea behind this. There are some days when I have a very perfectly scaffolded lesson that it just builds step by step by step. And so then I want to maintain control about what order I do things in. But maybe there's a day where I know we're going to do some pronunciation, some grammar, and some vocabulary. And it doesn't really matter which order I do them in. So why not give the students a chance to get in there and have a little bit of choice in the matter? It makes them feel more invested in everything we can do to make our students more invested, whether online or face-to-face. It raises student motivation, okay? So let's see. Looks like our group wanted to look at new vocabulary first. Students love vocabulary too, and so do teachers. All right, and then we have poll number 3, Gentry. This one is checking in with the emotional temperature that we might say. So I might do it anyway, but in this term of COVID-19, especially in the beginning, we began, I think March 31st was our first day, something like that. And so I checked in and I took their emotional temperature many times how you doing today? And it's not really like, oh, hi, how are you? It's really, how are you doing today? You can tell me, you can, and so our classroom space became a place where students could talk about their emotions and like everything that they were dealing with in terms of, many of our students, were away from home and then not sure if they could get back. We had many students who left in the middle of the term to go back home because they were studying here in the United States. And then they went back home, but but amazingly, every one of my students came back. They came in. And so some of my students were in Japan and taking my course at 2 in the morning. Others were in Saudi Arabia taking the course at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So it's really, really interesting. So here we have the majority of our group feels optimistic today. But this is a really excellent tool to be able to just check in and find out how your students are doing. And then it allows, here, I'll sharing. Can we see our group? So it allows us to share and talk about how we're feeling, and that also can be a way to help pull our students in. All right. Thank you, Gendry. So now I have another question, and I'm going to ask you to use the chat function in a moment. My first question that I ask students in every class I teach, every year, every term, is who do we learn our first languages from? So think for a moment, and then use the chat and start writing in who are some of the people we learn, how do we learn our first languages? Who do we learn them from? Go ahead and use chat, and let's see what it says. Family, parents and relatives. Woo, okay, mom and dad, family. Okay, yes, who else besides mom, dad? Who else specifically? Use specific names, friends. Woo, it's going so fast. Host family in San Diego, excellent, good. Neighbors, friends, videos, TV, teachers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. Okay, you get the idea, exactly, right? So what happens then when we get into classrooms? Okay, so our first languages, we're learning them from our brothers and our sisters, a lot of that, right? We're learning them from our mothers, our fathers, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, aunts and uncles, teachers, TV for sure. My little brother, his first word was mama. His second word was Batman. My father's heart was broken, but then it was okay because his third word was dad. So all was okay again. But yes, we learn from TV, we learn from all around us. And it's an amazing system, right? Pretty much everybody learns to speak their native languages. Different paces sometimes, different rates, and at different abilities, but we learn to speak our native languages. Then, what happens when we try to learn more languages in the classroom? Well, we get in the classroom and suddenly we've got tests and grades and teaching and homework and affective filters going up and lack of motivation and just in difficulty learning for people. So it's not at all the same situation. When we're learning our first languages, we're not sitting on our backsides on chairs at desks, right? We're up, we're moving. So in every kind of context, we want to be able to bring the language to life. And what I tell my students is, we don't have your mom's not here, your dad's not here, your brothers and your sisters, but we are going to be the mothers and the fathers and the grandmothers and the aunts and the uncles and the cousins and the neighbors and the media. So we are going to do that. So for each other. So I cannot stress enough. I have a whole presentation just about creating your language learning community. I devote a lot of my first week also doing my curriculum because I have to get through my curriculum, but everything I do has the dual purpose of building community and a linguistic purpose. So create your learning community. It's absolutely fundamental. And in this online environment, it's even more challenging, but more rewarding when it happens. So briefly at the agenda for this workshop, I have a lot kind of planned. I hope it's not too much. We'll continue with the introduction, and I'll tell you about the inventory that I did, what I normally do, what can I keep, what can I adapt, and the bottom line is, how am I going to engage my students while at the same time acknowledging the disruption that we are all going through. It's critically important for us to validate and acknowledge for our students how crazy this situation is and that this is not normal, or what is our new normal. So this is what our job is. I have a few classroom management tips, few examples of what worked best with my groups. I'll mention a disaster or two. And I'll show an example of how I follow my book format, but I weave it in with some fun, authentic materials. You just saw the polls, and I'm going to show one more poll later that we will do. We won't open it, we won't do it, but I'll just show it to you because it's another example of what you can do. Then we'll spend about 15 minutes in breakout rooms to plan an activity that you can use tomorrow. And we'll come back and maybe share a couple of ideas and have time for questions. So first, there was horror, there was fear, there was denial and resistance on my part, right? I have to do what in 2 weeks? So our university just made the decision to shut down, but many universities around the US just closed and sent their students home. Our university did not, I think, want to lose the money and did not want to disrupt people's education. What about graduating seniors? How can they graduate if we close down? So in fact, one of my classes was all seniors who were all getting ready to graduate. And what an unusual and strange last final term. I was their last class of all of college. But we had no time to prepare. We had 2 weeks, including spring break, which they said officially, oh, we can't ask you to work during spring break, but I don't know a single teacher who didn't work during spring break every single day. And so as such, we went into the term exhausted, no refresh button, and it was not an ideal situation. We had to learn new tools at the same time as getting organized to a whole new world reality. The landscape was changing every day. And at first I was focused only on the things that I couldn't do. It's like, I really was I felt, I hated myself because I was whining all the time. And I hate when I whine. It's not me and it's not what I do. And I spent a lot of my energy and time resisting the reality of the situation. And then after about 2 days of that, I just said, Laura, come on, let's go. And so then I thought, well, just sit down and make a list of all the things that you like to do with your classes. What are all the things you do? And so I started making this list. And then I realized as I made this list, oh, I can do this on Zoom. I can do that on Zoom. I can do 3 on Zoom. I can do all of this on Zoom. I can keep my daily warm-up conversation practice and my small group discussions and my student-made videos and my listening practice from the book and my grammar work and academic discussion skills practice and read-alongs, and Quizlet is what my site I use for vocabulary. I could do project work and games and dialogues and scenarios and in-class videos from the book and authentic materials. So suddenly I thought, okay, I can have some fun. I could do some meaningful things here. So here's what worked best. A daily check-in. Just, it seems like something that you don't necessarily always think of, but just check in with your students. How you doing today? How's it going? But a real question, not just a fake, hey, how are you? Don't bother with it if it's just, hi, how are you? If you're really asking them, be prepared for real answers. Our daily warm-up discussions. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. Very important. Students make videos in my class every week just so I can get an idea and I can listen to what issues they're still having and where they still need work, what they're having trouble incorporating, and what they're doing really well, and give them applause about that, and then create lessons based on those for what they really need, what will be useful for them. I learned how to load up my PowerPoints with the links and materials, so it was already set, so that made things run more smoothly. My intern Lee, we both joked about how it was very choppy in the beginning, and we were both kind of like, but after a couple of weeks, everything started going much more smoothly. It was pretty good. When we started doing games and dialogues and scenarios are really, really fun. And you can do scenarios with kids, with adults. There are some ideas on the handout for those, which you can check out later. I could, pronunciation, stress, and intonation. It was a little different because of the time lag sometimes with Zoom, but it worked. It was still work. I asked everybody to turn off their mute, and we would do some intonation and stress practice and pronunciation. And here's an idea that I will also talk about again in a little bit, but you can make students rotating teaching assistants to help with chat or breakout rooms or other tasks, okay? And because that's a big challenge. Now, I was lucky, I work with student teachers in one class, and I had an intern in another class. So I had assistants, actually. But when I don't have assistants, in terms I have a rotating leader of the day, and I have my students be that assistant, and it's fabulous for them. They love doing it, and they get really, really good at it, and it helps raise motivation once again. And the polls, as we talked about, as we did, and we explored a little bit. So let me talk for a minute about the daily warm-up discussions. Adapt them for your level and your age group, and you can practice grammar forms and topics, but it's a great opportunity for fluency. About 3 years ago, I started doing an experiment. I've always used some warm-up topics in my classes, but I didn't do it as an everyday experience until about 3 years ago. And then I kept hearing students saying, we don't get enough time to practice speaking in their speaking listening classes. So I thought, okay, there's something wrong here. So let's do this every day. We'll start out every single day with some topic. And on my PowerPoint slide, there's the welcome, marvelous Monday, thinking Thursday. And then down below were the question or two that I had for them to talk about. They went into breakout rooms, had their conversations, and then came on back. And every term I do this, I check with the students beginning, middle, and end of the term, and I ask them, is this worth your time? Should I keep doing this, these daily warm-up discussions? And 100% of students, 100% of the time have said, yes, please. We don't understand why more teachers aren't giving us time to talk. And when I do it, what happens? Let me show you just some tricks that you can do for setting this up. One question, do you like this weather? Why or why not? So we're talking about vocabulary, small talk, which actually for us, weather is really important. So I don't think it's small talk, but we talk about the weather and also language of preferences. What are you going to do this weekend? Okay, so that might be on Thursday, I might have that on our last day of the week together. So now we're looking at, I'm giving an expression, the going to plus the verb, it's natural personalized practice to talk about using this going to express future events or future activities. Did you have a nice weekend? What did you do over the weekend? So then we're eliciting past tense and introducing the expression over the weekend, which is not intuitive. Have you been to blah, 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 blah? Think of some places in Eugene, or you could talk about travel. And what's lovely about this is one of my favorites, because I've been teaching lower levels and they have not yet studied present perfect, but that doesn't mean you can't use it. You can give it to them as a chunk that then they practice. So have you been to blah, 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 and then show them how to make the answers. Yeah, I've been to, or no, I haven't been to blah, 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 blah. Look at the pictures on page 42 and 43. Which experiences do you want to have? Rank them. So now we're doing a little bit of higher order thinking skills, for example, while we're talking about the topic that's in their chapter from the book. Here's another one of my favorites. Find something you have in common with each of the people sitting near you. Make it unusual, not typical. This is actually one of my icebreakers I do in all classes too. I put people and I say, ask each other questions, right? Because then you have to ask questions. And so find out what do you have in common with somebody? And then I also say, make it unusual, not typical, which are two of our vocabulary words also. But I say, you can't do things like, oh, we're all students at the AEI, or, oh, we both speak Japanese. No, 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 no. I say, make it interesting, surprise me, get really creative. And they do. When we make space for our students to get really creative, they absolutely do it. Then we did some other things, things like, is it better to give or to receive? Explain your answer. Use your statements of agreement and disagreement and your follow-up questions. So all of this helps serve our other things, but it really focuses on fluency for 10 minutes every day. And you know how if you do, let's say you take weights, right? And you do 10 minutes every day, you're going to see a difference. And that's what happens with our students. And not only could I see the difference, but they could feel it. They all said, I can't believe how much better I am speaking now. I did not think I could do this in 10 weeks. And Lee and I noticed, we noticed their fluency just going, now, accuracy, not as quick, it never will be, but we could hear them changing things. And I remember saying to one student last week, saying, Safe, I'm amazed. You just used that modal auxiliary you've been asking me about for weeks. You just used it perfectly. So he gets the big bell, okay? Or a yay. Or he gets my helper. This is my helper too. He gets applause from Petula Possum. Hi, everybody. She's saying hi. She'll be back. So we're not going to do this fourth poll, but my student teachers and I all together teach an English conversation class. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were doing, our week's topic was controversial topics. So these are the higher level students in our school, levels 4, 5, and 6 are eligible to take this elective class. So we have some people who can really speak quite efficiently and effectively, and other people who are still struggling, but they have signed up to have practice in conversation. And on this topic, what my student teachers did was created this poll, which we'll show you in a moment. And then we did a jigsaw activity out of it that was super, super cool. It was really fun. And they came up with this idea. We had a 4-question poll. I have 4 student teachers, so each one took a group of students into a breakout room, and each one discussed one of the questions. So group 1 discussed one question, group 2 another question, group 3 a third question, group 4 the 4th question. So that was step 1. Then they went into their breakout rooms and discussed for a set time for step 2. Then in step 3, come back to the main session. And then step 4 is you have a couple of choices for this. If your groups are doing well in breakout rooms, then you can regroup everybody so that each group now has someone from group 1, 2, 3, and 4 in it, right? So the idea of jigsaw. And then you have all new groups, and then each person's job is to report to their new group what their question was about and the topic. And then we launched this poll. We launched a poll to find out what they felt about it afterwards. The other option, though, for step 4, if breakout rooms are challenging, or once is okay, but you don't want to push your luck, as we say, no reason not to just stay as the whole group and discuss and summarize and ask questions, and then take poll number 4 as a group. So gently, can I have poll number 4? We're just going to look at it. It's so you can see the questions that they had. Question 1 was, what do you think? Agree or disagree, and state why. People will work harder if they are paid more for a job, okay? And so then each one has, I agree with this statement, and I will explain my answer to my group, or I disagree with this statement. Group 2 talked about, it said, animal testing should never be allowed. Group 3's question was, military or community service should be required of all citizens. And question 4, group 4, talked about murderers should be executed or killed as punishment for their crime. So talking about death penalty. Now we had 2 different controversial topics weeks. The first one was kind of light, where we talked about things like school uniforms and mandatory attendance at school and things like that. But then in the second time, we did these heavier questions, and our students loved them. The feedback we got was more of this, more of this, more of this. This was so cool. So they thought it was really, really great. All right, I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to quickly just share the results so we can see that we don't really doing this, but I just wanted you to get the idea of what you can do with another idea of what you could do with polls. Let's see, where are we at with time here? Okay, great. Briefly, I could talk about this piece for ages, for half an hour. Student-made videos. So I always ask my students to make me videos. Through our course website, we have a video program, and I find that really useful for homework. It also tells me really well what connections to the language they're making, where they still need work, what are problems for a lot of people, and it helps me just guide my lessons for the next week. It also, I make videos back to them a lot of times, or I'll give them individual feedback in the feedback section, and just not on everything. I pick maybe 3 things to focus on. Hey, try this. I loved what you talked about. It was such a cool idea. Some suggestions, and I don't even call them corrections. I just call them suggestions to work on, and they really like them. But then a different kind of video, as I said before, we had some students who were, studying here in the US, but then traveled home. So we went, I decided they were going to be missing, some were going to Japan, some were going to Saudi Arabia, and some other countries around the world. And so, but they said they were going to come back, and they did. But what we were excited at, what I said was, I gave them a job. I said, okay, I want you to be a reporter. I'm stuck at home. I don't know what's going on out in the world, and you're about to take this huge adventure. Be a journalist and make me a video. Now, what I expected was it was just going to be like a regular video, like they make at home, where they just talk into the camera and then I listen to it. But instead, the first pair, a pair of sisters did it, and then everybody else took their model from them. They took all these little video clips on their iPhones, and then they used iMovie and put them together for like a 2.5-minute video that was so touching and so exciting. Actually, they became filmmakers. So I can't spend more time talking about this now, but tap into your students making videos, either what's going on in your environment, or what did you read? If everybody's doing extensive listening, for example, make an ad for your book and sell it to everybody else. Convince everybody why your book is the best book out of anybody's. And a colleague of mine does that, and students come up with amazing videos. So I want to move now to just talk about a few classroom management tips. And I will be honest that I think these pertain to both face-to-face classes or online classes. And I wish I knew who said this, but the more engaged that students are, the fewer classroom management challenges that we're going to face. And again, I wish I knew who said this. Somebody said, an engaged class is a managed class. And that is absolutely, absolutely true. Your students are not going to get off task and misbehave if they're fully invested in the activity. So if we can find things that pull everybody in, it's really, it's going to solve 95% of our classroom management problems proactively before they even begin. So, and that's our best way to solve problems. The more engaged, here's a little trick I've learned because I'm old now. Just give just enough time to finish a task, right? So let's say, okay, everybody, you've got 20 seconds to do this, or you've got 2 minutes, or I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then I'm going to close the breakout rooms. So however much is the appropriate amount of time, give them just barely enough time. Why? Because it will speed things along. It will get those like, oh my gosh, okay, we only have 2 minutes. They won't waste time. You'll train them to jump right in and get going and not waste a lot of time. Then if they genuinely need more time to finish, teacher, no, wait, we need more time. They will tell you, and then you can give them more time. But if you give too much to the beginning, everybody moves very slowly. Now, sometimes you want a nice, calm atmosphere. I am not a super calm teacher, but I see the value in that. And so sometimes I will do that. But with speed, you can keep things moving along and your pacing moving along. And then you can give incentives, extra points for students who finish first and correctly. Although I don't like to reward students necessarily for being fast, because not everybody learns that way. I don't learn that way. I am a slow learner, and so I really empathize with my students. So I find all kinds of ways to give them points for being correct, not just being first. Other classroom management tips. Again, I mentioned this earlier. Create a system of rotating teaching assistants. So again, I have had interns all this last year that I've been working with from our graduate school, and such a blessing. Oh my goodness, it's amazing, especially on Zoom. It's incredible to have a partner. So consider being a cooperating teacher and having an intern from one of the universities around, or working with another partner, or having a volunteer. But maybe you're home and you've got, a teenager at home. Pull your teenager in to do some stuff sometimes. You can get different teaching assistants, but you can also train your students to be, in the first week, I do some training a lot of times where I teach them how to do it. So in face-to-face classes, maybe they might run the PowerPoint, they might take attendance, pass out papers, collect papers. In small groups, they can maybe make sure in Zoom, they can make sure in breakout rooms that students are keeping it in English. And when the students have the responsibility for that, again, their motivation goes up, their agency goes up, and they really start rising to the occasion. When we put trust in them, they give it back to us. And they can get points for doing a good job on their day. They can write in chat, they can help monitor the group. So I've seen teachers do this at even levels 1 and 2, a rotating teaching assistant of the day, a student leader of the day is another way you can call it. It is so fun and so great, and they really do a very, very good job, most of them. How do I reward them? Even face-to-face, sometimes I love to bake, so I'll bring muffins sometimes, but points, points, or a star on the board, or or woo, 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 or the little happy dance, all kinds of different ways that don't cost any money or take any time. 2 more classroom management tips. I'm going to share an example in a moment about this first one. This is another whole presentation I have on this. But if we have these books, these great textbooks now. I mean, textbooks, I've been teaching a long time, and textbooks did not used to be this good, but now we've got Top Notch and Summit and Pathways from National Geo. We use Pathways from National Geographic and Cengage, and they're beautiful. They've got great materials. They're beautifully scaffolded and everything. But a book is a book is a book is a book. And if you do exercise A, exercise B, exercise C, exercise D, exercise E, you're gonna lose your students. They're gonna go to sleep because it's boring and it sucks the life right out of the lesson, right? So rip the material from the book. You don't have to reinvent it. They already wrote the book, but take it out in a face-to-face classroom, pop it on some pieces of paper and slap them on the walls. In class here online, you can do the same thing, and I'm going to show you an example of something that I did in just a moment. And here, this is another classroom management tip that is going to affect motivation. It doesn't exactly pertain to any single point, but this is a passionate point of mine. I've been teaching online classes, okay, different than the Zoom, okay, put your language class on Zoom. We here have taught online. I've taught online for 12 years with teacher training courses and professional development, and I work with teachers around the globe. Now, these classes were very well developed by other people or myself, but ahead of time, not 2 days ahead of time. And one of the things, though, that I notice in conversations with teachers around the globe, doesn't matter what country, I hear every year, time after time after time, oh, when I'm putting my students in groups, I put the higher level students with the lower level students so that the higher level students can help the lower level students and the lower level students can ask questions of the higher level students. And it's a great idea on paper. It's a great idea in theory. And in practice, most of the time, in my experience, it's a disaster. It does not help at all. Why? Because the so-called higher level students get really frustrated. You're the teacher. I'm not the teacher. I don't want to teach them. And it's not that, because in my classes, everybody's working together and they are cooperating. But on high stakes assessments, for example, or in a conversation, I want them, not every time, I mix up my groups, but a lot of times I put my higher level students together, and then I put the so-called shyer or lower level or quieter or students who came in at a lower level, I put them together. And when I do that, magic happens. What happens? The higher level students are all challenging each other and pushing each other, able to ask each other the kinds of questions and operate at a higher level that is satisfying and motivating for them. And where the real magic happens, though, is with the so-called lower level students, because if you pair up a higher level student and a lower level student, the lower level student is going to zip it. They're not going to say anything. They are going to defer to the people who they think know the language better and, of course, have the answer right. But when they are in a group of students at their same level, suddenly it's like, oh, okay, I feel comfortable enough to take this, to try this. And what ends up happening is they end up speaking up, trying things, being brave, and taking the risks that are necessary for successful language learning. So I cannot just, if you are a teacher who matches up lower level and higher level all the time because of what I just said, try this. Just try it and see what happens, okay? I think you will be amazed. Now, sometimes I let my students pick their own groups, and then they choose their good friends, or they choose people who are higher and lower levels than themselves. And that's no problem then. That's great, because they chose it. Now, here's something that for online teaching, classroom management, these are some of the challenges that are a little bit trickier for us. And I don't necessarily have the answers for these. I'm working this out with you right here, boots on the ground. Are they speaking in English when they're in breakout rooms? My students actually were. I was blown away. They were really speaking with each other the whole time in English. But that's not normal. Are they doing the work? Are they cheating on assessments? Are they there? And can we require video being turned on? So these are all just some questions that you will want to work on and keep answering. If you have somebody, if you have a teaching assistant or student leaders of the day, they can help you with some of this, okay? We don't want to have people informing on others, but we can help be part of the classroom community. And just briefly, in teacher talk, when we talk about teacher talk, ask yourself, what happens when I stop speaking? How can I make that work for me? And what questions can I ask them that I don't know the answer to? I have found this to be critically important. So I might say think, pair, share. Frank Lyman in 1981 came up with this idea of think, pair, share, which is just excellent. One of my favorite teaching tools. And you can do this online, and you can do this in face-to-face. Think for a moment, turn to the person next to you, and then come back and share. How do I do it? How did I adapt it online? Think for a moment. Now go to your groups, talk with your groups, and come back in 2 minutes sharp. We'll share our answers on chat or orally. Okay, so just another idea. But one thing I think is very important for us is when we stop talking, which seems weird because I haven't stopped talking for 50 minutes now, but what happens when we stop talking? We make room for our students to start talking. And what happens when we ask them questions that I don't know the answer to? That's when they start speaking. I try to make my students the expert as often as I can, because then I can model what it's like to be a learner, plus it's interesting. Okay, so these are all things that we can start doing. Here are a couple of examples of questions we don't know the answer to. Is your street noisy or quiet? Describe your neighborhood. Is there ever a good reason to lie? If yes, what are some examples? If no, why not? Okay, now it's your turn. So now it's everybody's turn here. Quickly, just write one question that we could use with students that we don't know the answer to. And I'll read a couple of them off. Anybody have one? A question? Let's see. What did you do yesterday? Who's the craziest person in your family? Do you have brothers? Who's been your greatest inspiration? Excellent. How would you feel in 2 days? Oh, I love that one. That's cool. Do you have a pet? Okay, perfect, right? These are all questions. What's your pet's name? Of course, that's an excellent follow-up question. What do your parents like to do? What would you do with $500? Yeah, exactly, okay? So these are fabulous questions. Maybe, Gentry, if it's possible, at the end, can we make a copy of the chat at the end that then we could maybe turn? Sure. I don't know if that's possible. That would be great. All right, thank you. So you get the idea. Ask your students questions you don't know the answer to every day, and you will be amazed what starts happening. So just super quickly, because we're running low on time now, we do impromptu speeches. We do several kinds of speeches. And so one of the ones they did was a trip that they took in the past. So whenever they're doing speeches in my classes, somebody gives a presentation, but one of the tricks I learned the hard way a few years ago, many years ago now, was give everybody in the class a job to do. So, because they won't listen otherwise, or some will listen, but many won't. And they'll get distracted, or they'll pull out their phones, or they'll just start dreaming. And so you have to give the classmates, the audience, a job to do. So for every presentation, I have everybody think of one question, and they don't know who I'm going to call on to say, okay, what's your follow-up question? So that everybody has to be ready. And then, and if they genuinely don't have one, they can pass and call on someone else, and then I'll call on them the next time. But then I open it up and for other questions, and it's amazing. People really start asking lots of great questions. And then this helps prepare for our graded academic discussions, because follow-up questions, clarification questions are all a part of the skills that we're learning. And then they get points for both speaking and for asking their questions. Another really, really fun one. Now, if you're working with kids, everybody knows, I think, show and tell. The same activity is fabulous for adults, but I would say do not call it show and share. Show and tell just sounds a little childish, at least in English. Show and share maybe a little bit more convenient for adults. Yes, somebody's asking if is it possible to send the presentation. I am happy to make this available for people. And also, I meant to say, feel free to take pictures of the slides. Now, rip it from the book. This is one of my concepts. So for example, in our textbook, we had been working on ordinal numbers, adverbs of sequence, and steps in a process. So then I wanted to try to find an authentic video, something that, does everybody know the definition of authentic materials? They are things that are not created for classroom purposes. They are things that are created for people in the culture themselves. And they are fabulous resources, but we have to adapt them to scaffold them and make them appropriate for our students. But I could not believe I found this one on the first try. So after we practiced from the book, then we were going to move to the personalization and to practice. I found this video, which it's about 1.5 minutes. Let's see if we can get it to play. All right, so now I seem to have lost everybody. Let me see my participants again. And I can't see, I don't know if, can everybody, oh wait, there we go. Ah, here we are.
We're here and we can see you and we can see your PowerPoint. So you're great. Yeah.
Okay. So back to now, the way the book format has these post-viewing activities, you know, pre-viewing, while viewing, and post-viewing. So I created a series of activities and steps for them based on this video. So how many ingredients are in the recipe? That was sort of a joke question, and everybody could say, oh, there were only 2. But then I said, how many steps are there in this recipe? Count back in your mind and compare with your partners. So then they had to like go back into their brains and activate their memories and think, oh, how many were there actually? And so they started working through it again. Then is it easy or hard to make in your opinion? Is this a recipe you think you could make? Why or why not? A recipe you think you would make? Why or why not? So just kind of a fun assignment. They had a really good time with this. Then we put them into breakout rooms and we told them to go make their own video. They didn't have to actually make a video, but to come up with a silly recipe like that. And I said, make it a comedy if you like, or make it a normal one if you don't. And then just tell us about it, which we had a really fun time. Now, I'm not going to play this song. I will be happy to stay after if anybody wants to hear the song and talk more about what we did. But songs are wonderful in both face-to-face classes, but I think especially important in this online quarantine term. And I chose this song. I did not know it even a few days before. I had just found it, but the language was accessible. I became new. It's Billie Eilish song and Khalid Robinson. And I didn't know it, and I don't know exactly what it means. And my students loved it. This became like one of our best days, just the most amazing days. It was a very dark day, and I wasn't sure if a dark and moody song would be right or not, but it turned out to be exactly the right thing for everybody's mood back in April when just everything was so scary. So I'm not going to play the song for you right now, but I'm just going to show you, here's what you can do. You know, you put the lyrics up on the board, you can embed the link right there. So it's super easy. And this I loved because the language was very accessible. But then what I also love about using a song, or I always make transcripts for lots of videos that I watch, and then you can use those as texts that you later create, for example, grammar transformations on. So you might say things like, here, I'm going to move to so here are some follow-up activities. What is the song about? I'll do the grammar transformation I'll talk about in a moment. Songs are really interesting because they're open to interpretation. And so what does that mean? Well, everybody can have a different idea about what the song means or is about. And so what did you understand from this song? Nobody's right and nobody's wrong. What do you think it's about? Why do you think this? And give as many reasons to support your idea and share with your partner. So they did this, and woo, Lee is here and she could tell you about it too. Our students went crazy on this song and they loved it. It fit the mood just perfectly. Now I've worked with some teachers who said they don't like it because they think it's about suicide. And I don't know that it's about that. I think it's associated with that. I think it's more about depression or getting out of a bad relationship, which it's a lot of songs, but I think it was used in a TV show that was about suicide. And so that's why some people associated it with that. But anyway, you can use the text. You can use the song lyrics as a text to make transformation of. So, for example, go through the lyrics, make a list of all the present tense verbs, the past tense verbs, how many of each one are there, and then compare your lists with other groups. Or take all the present tense lines and put them into past tense if you can, and vice versa. Present into past, past into present. Make changes to time markers as necessary. Take all the affirmative sentences and make them negative. Turn negative statements into questions, questions into statements, right? You get the idea. Write down any unknown words. You can use your dictionaries. Choose 5 of the words to test each other on and practice saying what they mean. So you can take a song and develop a week's worth of material, more than you even have time for. Stories. If you work with children, story time is wonderful and can work really well in online classes, but everybody loves to be read to. Adults really like it. So read and show them the pictures if you feel comfortable enough in your own language. But if you don't, get audio recordings or get a native speaker you know to make some of these recordings. You can show the pictures and play a recording of the story. You can make your own and upload it to YouTube or play commercially recorded versions. You can invite guest readers who could be your own children, your friends, other teachers, grandparents. Read stories that have actions in them, and then students do the actions that they hear, or they hold up an object that is mentioned. Read stories and have students follow along, and that helps make the match up between what they're seeing and what they're hearing. And these are just a couple pictures of some of the ones that I've done and put up on YouTube. And then the last slide before we go to breakout rooms, I know I'm running a little late here. Silver linings. So this was something we talked about early on in, I think, week 2 of our class, was there's an expression in English: no matter how dark the forecast, every cloud has a silver lining. So first we talked about, what does that mean? What do you think it means? And we talked about that for a while. And then we just elicited from our students, what are some silver linings that either you feel or you've heard about or anything? And they started during this COVID-19 pandemic. And they started talking about, people are I gave the example of family dinners. In the States, family dinners have sort of gone away because everybody's so busy all the time, running here, running there, jobs and sports and this and that and clubs. And now suddenly during the pandemic, people were discovering family dinners again. Or how all the artists are getting so creative about working together online. And then they started talking about things like, I thought I would have to stop my education, but I didn't have to. And now we're meeting online and blah, blah, blah. And they talked a lot about that. So this ended up being a day that both Lee and I were kind of almost crying at the end. It was so powerful and so moving. So I highly recommend you talk about silver linings, and it helps keep things positive and it's just wonderful for language development. So let's now move to breakout rooms. We'll spend about 15 minutes and you can work together or alone and create or brainstorm an activity or a lesson scheme that's useful for your context, something that you can use on Monday with your students. And if possible, maybe have somebody take some notes so that everybody can share them. You can use the handout for practical ideas or inspiration, and then just adapt as needed. And then when we come back, we'll try to share an idea from each group of working with kids, with teens, and with adults before we have the time for questions. So Gendry, if we could do our breakout rooms. And
sure. I'm just going to display like a slide
Yes.
with some instructions, and then we can create them.
Excellent.
Very well. So before we go to breakout rooms, some important information for you to consider. First of all, this is a great opportunity for you to have a small group collaboration. You're going to be able to apply the concepts that we have learned today to your personal context, and also discuss with people that are facing similar situations. Now, it's really important for you to mute your mic when you're not speaking, so that we can minimize background noise. Now here in the main room, you're not able to unmute it, but once you enter your breakout room, you're going to be able to mute them. And it's really important for you to follow the conference etiquette guidelines and be respectful towards everyone. So we're going to be moving Laura around the breakout room. She's going to be able to visit a couple of them, but not all. So we will have some time to interact at the end. Once we finish the breakout rooms, we're going to return to the main room so that we can share your findings and then wrap up the session. Again, go ahead. Okay, welcome back, everyone. See that we're returning from breakout rooms. We're just going to wait a couple seconds for everyone to be back. And well, thank you very much, everyone, for your participation in breakout rooms. Now we have some time to wrap up the session, and we will have some time for our question and answer time. Laura, do you have any wrapping up that you would like to do, or should we jump directly into questions?
Well, let me just do a quick wrap up, but where's my screen share? Oh, here we go. Share screen. Okay, so one thing, just a couple quick final thoughts I want to leave you with is, as the teachers, we set the tone, and it's hard what we're trying to do, really hard and frustrating. Try to bring the joy, set the tone, okay, and just try to make it. And you know what? We do the best we can. And my university, the students at our university came up with this poster. This is our, and so we are all in the same boat, written in all the different languages of students that come to our university. So todos estamos en el mismo barco, right? Nous sommes tous dans le même bateau. Wir sind alle im gleichen Boot, right? So all these different languages to show that we are all in the same boat. So let's take care of each other now and then moving forward. And I just want to say thank you, gracias, spasiba, and questions.
All right, so you guys can feel free to use the chat if you have any questions, or raise your hand and we will open your microphone for you. We have one question that previously came in, and it says, how do you handle it when some students are very engaged with an activity and others are uninterested, because the topic is not very relatable to them?
So that happens sometimes. I think one thing that I tend to do is when I see some students who aren't engaged, maybe I'll come over and try to engage with them. I might even say something like, I could see this topic isn't so great for you. You're just not that interested in it. I find that when I speak directly to students about a problem, that it helps take some of the pressure off. So that's one thing I would do. And I also might say, okay, I can see this topic didn't work so much for you. Just do your best with it. Do everything you can. And then give me a suggestion of a topic you would like to talk about next time. And then you just keep getting student voices in.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that response.
Sure.
Do we have any other question? Remember, you may raise your hand and we will allow you to speak directly so that Laura can interact with you. Someone is asking, how many languages do you speak?
I only really, my Spanish is, I can function in Spanish. It's not great. I studied a little bit of French in college. My family is Russian, but I don't really speak much of it. And I studied some German. Not nearly as many. I want to speak Arabic. I want to study Mandarin, and I want to study Italian and Brazilian Portuguese. So.
Wonderful. Well, we have a question coming in from Henry Valerio. Henry, I'm going to ask you to unmute your microphone, so go ahead.
All right. First of all, thank you a lot to Laura Holland. She's being great. And I just want to tell you, how do you deal with the fact that some of our students sometimes don't, let's say, master the app we are using, so we need to spend time like explaining them how to use whatever we are using. I don't know, Mentimeter or Google Forms or whatever. So how can we make that, like, not so time consuming? I don't know, tell me a little bit about your experience.
Oh, I don't think I've figured that one out yet. Um, it's time consuming. I think it's just, it gets better as we get going. But I have been spending a lot of time, much more even than usual. All that time I'm not driving to work or commuting to work, I'm actually now spending on preparing or giving feedback or working with the tools. I would say though that eventually, because this situation is not going away, we're all going to get a little bit better at it. And we just have to be patient with the students. And then I would say, I'm sorry, but just invest the time. The more we invest with our students, the more we will get back from them, I think. So I think it's worth it, even though it's hard and we don't have any extra time.
Yeah, but I can see your point because it's a matter of, getting accustomed to it. Probably we all are going to get better and better every time.
We got a lot
practicing.
better really fast. So, I didn't think it would be, and I'd be really happy to, if we end up teaching again in the fall. Right now, they're making plans to open our university again in the fall with very strict rules and cleaning and guideline and changes. I will be very surprised if we're actually in the classroom in the fall. I have a feeling we're not going to be. So I'm now, the first term, it was kind of like, okay, just do the best you can. You've got 2 weeks, even if there's a disaster. Oh, and I didn't tell you about my disaster. But I had a day where everything failed. I kept getting booted off and the videos wouldn't play. And what happened when I got booted off of Zoom 3 different times in the same day, when I came back in, what had happened? One of my students had taken screenshots of the slides and she was leading class when I came back. I almost cried. It was just so amazing. It was Leanne, of course, right? So it's just amazing what we can do. And we'll all get better at this. We just will. And in the meantime, we have to have patience with ourselves and with our students, especially the kids. Keep in mind too, the kids are freaking out in some cases. We have stories of kids laying curled up on their beds, crying in fetal positions. No, I don't want to go to school today. I can't do this. They're not used to spending hours on Zoom. So we really need to be super, super patient with our students and ourselves. Another?
All right. Well, unfortunately, we ran out of time. So on behalf of the organizing committee of the National Conference for Teachers of English in Costa Rica, I want to thank Laura Holland for her presentation today and for her willingness to share her time and contribute to the success of our online event. So let's give her a warm virtual applause like this, or you can use the little reactions down there in your controls.